The Psychotic Supreme Court, October 3rd, 2018. The obvious breakdown of the American representative democracy has occurred. We no longer live in a constitutional democracy or a representative republic. In fact, it is evident that our government has been wholly taken over by the corporate special interests of the wealthy and the self-interested, who only vow to serve and protect the international cabal of trillionaire cutthroat capitalist gangsters who are destroying our world and threatening the future of all mankind, womankind, and indeed all life on this planet. If increase goes on unceasingly, there is certain to be a breakthrough. Even if only one inferior man is occupying a ruling position, he is able to oppress superior people. Even a single passion, still lurking in the heart, has the power to obscure reason. Passion and reason cannot exist side by side. Therefore, fight without quarter is necessary if the good is to prevail. 43. Breakthrough. The Book of Changes. The I Ching. The senators did not seem to be bothered much with Brett's angry response to the suggestion that he was a heavy drinker and may have been involved in very unethical and even criminal activities with women in the past. That he is obviously aggressive, patrician, biased, angry, and dismissive of women in power, much like our bloated celebrity apprentice president, or even that he repeatedly perjured himself or has a long history of abuse of powers and hatred of the Democrats and liberals. None of it seems to matter to the senators or the FBI. The disgusting Republicans, like Lindsey Graham, lauded and bemoaned this paragon of establishment and corporate power and exalted the fact that his jurisprudence was against the people and for the corporations, or that his service at the highest levels of government sought to prosecute and embarrass President Clinton with heartless and vicious exposure of his consensual sexual dalliances. Even the bold and frightening fact that his work with George Bush led directly to the greatest crime of the fascist Republican radicalism, the most damaging legislative and judicial treason of the Roberts Court, the Patriot Act, and Citizens United. Even this obvious traitorous abdication of the Constitution and the will of the people in favor of the corporate kleptocracy of unchecked and above-the-law corporate rule was not enough to declare this man unfit for service of any kind. This terribly and glaringly obvious fault, that he is corrupted by his allegiance to the destruction of the constitutional rights of free citizens against the obvious abuse of power and privilege in our government and in our corporate and financial systems, didn't count. Even that he lied about his past and many other things doesn't seem to matter, or the fact that he was obviously unhinged by the pressure of the accusations and criticisms of the process of selecting a man that can shape the laws of our troubled land for the next 30 or 40 years. But to me, the most telling sign that we have allowed these wealthy and self-interested politicians on both sides of the divide to dismantle the New Deal and keep us chained to the rotted and corrupted institutions of treasonous and criminal abdication of the responsibilities of civilized and fair society, was the agonized cries of ordinary citizens, continuously erupting from the gallery and being mobbed and escorted out by huge fat police in black Nazi uniforms with badges of authority and guns and clubs and armed with the thick and ignorant bias of bullies. Even these poor and deluded servants of the corporate rule are running scared and threatened by the cruelty they are paid to inflict on the passionate voices that cry for justice and fairness and decency in a world that is destroying itself with violence, corruption, graft, poison, and perversity. To ignore this bitter chorus of agonized screams against the obvious abuse of unchecked corporate power and the obvious and blatant obstruction of justice is one thing that signals the people's eventual revolt against this abomination of the abuse of power, obstruction of justice, and a betrayal of their vows to protect and defend the people against tyranny. The conceits, injustices, and atrocities of the kings of the past are nothing compared to the boldened conceit of Trump and the Republicans and Hillary and the Democrat establishment puppets that are ignoring the cries of abused women and children and running away from the consequences of their greed and secret corruption, sexual deviance, and the lawless and immoral stealing of trillions upon trillions of dollars from the people to be used for further entrenchment of this perverted and wholly corrupted class of sick, narcissistic, sociopathic, and psychotic people of privilege and unchecked and unlimited wealth. The perpetual war and the poisoning of opiates, the loss of the quality of life, racism, violence, alcoholism, sexual abuse, misogyny, murder, and bullying all result when conceited and blind fools take positions of power away from those who should govern, people of compassion and vision who rise above their times and selflessly chart the course of nations to always progress and refine our world, to make it always more equal and free and not less. Since November 22nd, 1963, we have allowed the unchecked wealth of trillionaires to rule and ruin our world. Since the progressive revolution of 2016, when political power was wrestled away from the establishment by the hope of a people oppressed and thirsty for more than the toxic, bitter juice of wrath, poverty, powerlessness, and oppression, we have seen the diseased and bloated orange emperor walking proudly and naked, without shame, through our political and social world, supported by his evil henchmen and sycophantic thieves, spewing hate and violence, misogyny, greed, selfishness, and the gross obsession with the crude and brutal use of unlimited power. Judgment, breakthrough. One must resolutely make the matter known at the court of the king. It must be announced truthfully. Danger. It is necessary to notify one's own city. It does not further to resort to arms. It furthers one to undertake something. Will we ever see the great and compassionate heart of America again? Or will we continue to be the victims of this uncivil class war that started the day they shot the president sitting next to his wife in broad daylight? It continued through Vietnam and the Gulf of Tonkin, RFK, MLK, and John Lennon assassinations, Nixon, Reagan, the Bushes, and 9/11, war in Iraq, Afghanistan, and elsewhere, perpetual war for profit. And now, this latest disgusting and unbelievable tragedy of a government that has become an empire of malicious and unscrupulous men of wealth and privilege, earned through inheritance and the ability to use and abuse the system. These are subhuman beasts who lack the decency, temperament, and reason to be anything but a psychotic criminal class above the law, parading around like statesmen, but achieving only anarchy and destruction, and heading headlong into the extinction of all life on this miraculous garden planet for the sake of their conceit and insatiable avarice and secret self-loathing. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Let us not go extinct.